Hello, everyone, and welcome. We are going to get started in just about 30 seconds. Hello, everyone. For those that are just now joining, we are just allowing the folks to get logged on and get their sound working. We'll start in about 10 seconds. All right. Good afternoon and welcome to the Indiana Youth Institute's March webinar, Empowering Emotional Distress Tolerance in Youth. My name is Joshua Long. I'm the Senior Educational Content Manager here at IYI. Thank you for joining us today. We're grateful to have the chance to connect as a community of Indiana youth workers who remain committed to meeting the needs of our youth and children. For those who are not familiar with IYI, our mission is to improve the lives of all Indiana children by strengthening and connecting the people, organizations, and communities that are focused on kids and youth. Listed here, you can see our vision that drives the work we do for Indiana youth. And before we begin, I'm going to share a few pointers that will help you engage with today's webinar. For any technical support issues, use the chat feature to send a message and I will assist you the best that I can. You can use this feature to converse with the group as well. Just make sure that in the to line, you have everyone selected. We also encourage you to ask questions, so please use the Q&A feature for any you may have, and we will get to as many as possible. Feel free to also upvote the questions that you like the most to the top. Later today, you'll receive a link to complete an evaluation of this webinar. Please take a few minutes to let us know your thoughts on today's presentation. And if you don't receive the evaluation email, check your junk email as it may have been directed there. Once you complete the evaluation, you'll be redirected to your certificate of participation. Like all of IYI's webinars, today's webinar will be posted on our website if you'd like to revisit a portion later or share the opportunity to listen in with partners. It is now my pleasure to turn it over to our speaker for today, Dr. Tamika Sapolsky. Dr. Sapolsky.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Josh. I'm going to go ahead and share screen and get started. Okay, so yes, so today we're going to be talking about emotional resilience and distress tolerance in youth. And hopefully, coming from this presentation, you'll be able to have actionable steps for you to be able to use for yourself, as well as for youth that you work with. So just to kind of lay the groundwork, I know many of us work in this area, but youth are dealing with a lot. They're navigating a lot of different complexities that, as myself as an adolescent and young adult, completely different than what youth are experiencing today. And it's really challenging. And the youth are letting us know that their mental health is suffering. And this is also found from survey data that was gathered from the Youth Risk Behavior Survey that's done in the state of Indiana. And they also have nationwide data that I'm going to present. So this is data from 2023 for Indiana youth. And you'll find from this data, and this is for high school youth, so 9th to 12th graders, that of the youth that were included in the survey, 1 in 3 reported that their mental health was poor. You find that about half of the youth reported feeling sad or hopeless for at least 2 weeks. And so that's a sign of depression or depressive symptoms. You also find about 1 in 4 youth reported seriously considering attempting suicide, and 1 of 4 youth also having a plan that they would use to attempt suicide. And unfortunately, we also have 1 in 5 youth in that year that had attempted suicide. Now, just breaking this down a little bit more of that data, one thing you'll notice is that the percentages for Indiana are higher than the percentages for the US. So that's one thing just to know that the youth that we serve are dealing with a lot and on a higher rate than what is found nationally. But we'll also see differences when we look based on age, race, as well as sexuality. And so pretty consistent trend we'll find with all the mental health outcomes is that females tend to report higher rates of poor mental health than males. We also find for overall poor mental health that multiracial youth also reported pretty significantly higher rates than other youth, as well as youth that were sexual minority. Now we see similar trends when we're looking at depressive symptoms. So again, this is almost every day for 2 or more weeks in a row of feeling sad or hopeless. That those rates, though 50% was the average, those are well over 50 for females. And you see also, I think for males that trend that in ninth grade was 26%, but it increased every year. And all this data is just for us to be able to understand, yes, youth are experiencing a lot, but also understand that there are some differences. It's so important for us to be able to recognize that and know that there might be populations of youth or time during adolescence that might be particularly challenging for youth. And we still see that multiracial youth are experiencing higher rates of depressive symptoms as well as sexual minority youth. Seriously considering suicide, again, similar trend. Those females are reporting pretty significantly higher rates. And then for this, we also find for the sexual and gender minority. Making a plan. A trend here, again, I want to show is that those rates for females are higher, but you do see for males for having a plan in 12th grade is comparable. So there is a jump that happens there that I think there's something there for us to be aware of. There might be something that's happening for males in particular when we're thinking about suicide plan during high school. Females are high, which is also critically important for us to understand, but it does stay fairly consistent across the years. And we also see that those sexual minority youth, this very consistent, are having very significantly higher rates of all the mental health outcomes compared to their peers that are not sexual minority. And then for attempting suicide, again, we see that the rates are higher for the US, but I think this is like one of those, they're all higher for India than the US, but 16 versus 9 is just, I mean, these are youth that are dying. And so all of these statistics are all concerning. And this is a particularly concerning due to the gravity of this outcome. And we do still see for this one too that females are attempting suicide at higher rates than males, as well as Black youth, multiracial youth, and youth that are sexual minority. And so all this, right, is telling us that youth are suffering, that they are dealing with a lot. And then when we ask youth, how are they coping with the distress that they're experiencing? There was really interesting data that came out, and this was from 4-H, a survey that was done among 4-H youth. So that is something to recognize that this is not like national data, but there isn't a lot of data that actually has been done for survey to understand how youth are coping. And so this data was done recently and does give us some indication of how youth are dealing or coping with the stress they're experiencing. And this one found that 67% of youth felt pressure to keep their feelings to themselves and also pretended to feel better so they didn't worry other people. 65% also said they felt like they felt they did deal with their feelings on their own. 50% said they tried to ignore those feelings or pretend like they weren't happening or spend more time alone. And 70%, 1 out of 7 or 7 out of 10 youth wish that schools taught them more about mental health and coping skills. And I would expand that to any youth serving organization that they are wanting resources, they're wanting tools to know how to deal with those emotions and the ways they're dealing with it currently. One, they're experiencing a lot and they're not working by keeping it to themselves, not wanting to worry other people, which means that their problems and their stressors are not being addressed. So while we're here today, we're going to be able to learn concepts of emotional resilience and the components of it, which are self-awareness and self-regulation. I want you all to understand the concept of mindfulness, which is a component of resilience, which will also provide you with practical strategies that you can use to help manage stress that both you are experiencing, but also be able to teach and help youth when they're experiencing the stress. We'll also talk about the concept of distress tolerance, and that's the idea of being able to manage through a stressful situation or stressful emotions without making that situation worse. And so I want to give you all practical strategies on how to use the stress tolerance again for yourself. Because I think for adults working with youth, we can model how to do these things, and that's helpful for them to know that we also struggle and there are things that can help, but also things that they can also use. And so for ourselves, as well as be able to effectively help the youth also manage the stress. And lastly, again, to be able to identify, apply these mindfulness and stress tolerance skills that you can model to youth and use for yourself. So these are the learning objectives that I hope that we'll be able to come out of today with. Now, one thing that I also want to provide you as we're going through is I like to make my presentations interactive. So there are handouts that Josh will send to you all afterwards. But if you want to go on to my website, I do also have the handouts because there's going to be a sheet that as we go through, I would like you all to write down what strategies you would use or could use with youth. And so just a way for you to be able to track those now. So you can go on the website there and get it, or you can just put it on a blank paper. Or watch it later and go back and write down your thoughts. So just to kind of lay the groundwork of what we're talking about emotional resilience. I define emotional resilience as the capacity to adapt during and after stressful situations or circumstances. And while some people might say resilience is the idea of bouncing back from adversity, I really believe that adversity can affect us and alter us. And sometimes we don't bounce back. We don't go back to where we were pre that adversity. But what resilience helps us do is to adapt and cope through those challenges, so that we continue to move forward, still acknowledging that that adversity might have really impacted us, but it's not keeping us from getting where we want to or need to go. And so there are two elements of emotional resilience. One is self awareness. So you have to recognize what the triggers are, what the things in the environment are within ourselves that are causing that distress, and be able to identify what that distress is, what emotion it is. And that's important because we can't cope with it or deal with it if we don't know what we're dealing with. That I will do something different with when I'm feeling anxious than when I'm sad, or if I'm angry, or if I'm bored. And so it's really important to be able to understand what I'm feeling and then also what is causing or triggering that feeling, right? To be able to adapt to it or be able to know next time when this happens, could I do something different or could I not place myself in that environment? So that recognition, that awareness is really important. And then once I'm aware of it, what am I going to do with it? And that's where that emotion regulation comes in place. So being able to use different strategies to manage and work through the distress that you're experiencing. And this can all be done through two types of strategies. One is mindfulness, and the other is distress tolerance. And both of these, there are a lot of different tools and workbooks that you could find on mindfulness as well as distress tolerance. The one that I'm trained in and really love using is dialectical behavioral therapy. And this is the skills manual. There's a lot in there, but I'm going to try to pull some of those practical pieces out so that you'll be able to apply these strategies for yourself as well as for the youth. So DBT, or dialectical behavioral therapy, has four components. Mindfulness is the core, kind of central part of DBT, which is the ability to focus and stay in that present moment and be able to understand what's going around me, how am I feeling, right? Really central to that resilience. And then there's also then distress tolerance, how to manage or tolerate through a crisis or stressful situation. And there's other two components, emotion regulation, which is that vulnerability, how to kind of keep ourselves in a good state or the best state as we can. So when distress happens, we're able to manage through. And then interpersonal effectiveness, which is being able to communicate what you need to other people. So those are the four components. We're going to focus on the mindfulness and distress tolerance for today. So mindfulness. Definition of mindfulness is bringing one's attention to the present moment by noticing your thoughts, your sensations, behaviors in a non-judgmental and non-reactive way. So being present, being here, so if I'm here right now, I'm not focused on what's going to happen later today or what happened yesterday, but in this present moment, fully focused on what's happening right in front of me. And mindfulness, sometimes people think is meditation, that I have to be able to like cross my legs and kind of sit still. And that's what being mindful is. That's meditation. Meditation is a type of mindfulness, but it's not the only way of being mindful. Mindful is basically any activity. if I'm fully present and I'm staying focused in what I'm doing, and if other things come in my mind, I come back. If I start having judgments, I recognize it and I come back to what I'm doing. That's being mindful. So I can mindfully read, I can mindfully participate in a webinar, I can mindfully give a presentation, mindfully talk to my friends, mindfully eat. Literally anything you do, you can do mindfully. And that's the great thing about it, that you can always practice this. And why it's important is that if I'm mindful, then I really am aware of what's happening. I'm fully engage and participate and enjoy the things that are really positive. If it is unpleasant or uncomfortable, at least I'm aware of what it is, how am I feeling, and I can figure out what to do about it. So mindfulness is just a really great tool. We can think about for academics too, of being able to be mindful and present is really great for studying and being able to stay attentive in class and what you're learning. And with mindfulness, as with anything else, the more you do it, the easier it gets. So, instruction. So, if I'm telling someone to be mindful or practice mindfulness, what I would say is I want you to focus your attention on one thing, fully participate, fully engage in it with non judgment. What does that mean? If I start being, oh gosh, this is so hard, or oh my gosh, I'm not doing a good job, I hate myself, that's judgment. And so, what we do is acknowledge, hey, I'm judging, and just bring myself back to doing what I'm supposed to be doing for that activity. And also, particularly like with ADHD or just with life, we other thoughts and feelings come into play when we're doing any activity. And so, with mindfulness, what we would say is that if your mind does wander, again, non-judgmentally, just acknowledge it. Hey, yeah, I got off track, and bring yourself back. I say it's kind of like when you're trying to get a puppy to like sit still. In the beginning, moving around a lot, but the more you practice it, the more you're able to stay in one place. Same thing with mindfulness. Your mind will wander, but the more you do it, the easier it gets to bring yourself back in focus. And I say start small, start 30 seconds. You don't have to do like 2 hours. That's really daunting. So start small and work your way up. And also, I say start with things that are easier for you. So for some kids, like playing video games or reading a book or coloring, whatever it might be that you already enjoy, you're probably already doing that mindfully. And so start there being aware that, hey, I'm doing this. And then you can work your way up to doing longer or adding other activities to being mindful. So, no time like the present to practice this. So, we're going to start with doing mindful breathing. With mindful breathing, we're going to do this as box breathing. So, as you can see in this picture, we're going to inhale and then we're going to hold that inhale and then you're going to exhale. And when you exhale, you just want to like just let it out. Try to sink deeper in the chair. Exhale. And at the bottom of the exhale, hold. We're going to go through that 3 times. You can have your eyes closed if you want to. If you want to focus on the screen, you can do that as well. And I'm also going to have a visual for us. So we're going to go ahead and do this 3 times. So sitting in your chair comfortably, go ahead and inhale through the nose, hold, and exhale, sink into the chair, and hold at the bottom. When you're ready, inhale, and hold, and exhale, and hold. One more time, inhale, hold, exhale, and hold. All right, continue breathing. You put in the chat how that was for you. And the more you do it, the more you can figure out what's the rhythm that works for you. Some people like the hold, some people don't like the hold. And I say, do what feels most comfortable for you. The hold just helps us slow down the breathing. So it's not that you have to hold it for a certain amount of time, but the idea is just that pause so that we're slowing the breath. And the more we slow the breath down, the body calms down. One other thing that I want to just point out with breathing, when we say deep breathing, another kind of word we use for that, that one thing about the body is that when we inhale, that activates the system, the sympathetic nervous system. And when we exhale, that activates the parasympathetic nervous system that calms the body. And so when people are anxious or hyperventilating, they're breathing in really strong breaths, right? And that's activating the system. That's going to make them more tense, more on edge. But when we exhale, that calms the body down. So when I'm doing any kind of breathing, what I tell people do, whether you're doing whatever counting you're try to make that exhale longer than the inhale. And that's going to really just help the body calm down. So inhale, hold, exhale as long as you can, that's comfortable, and hold at the end and start over. And that is box breathing. Now, with that box breathing, we did that. We had some visual if you like that, but you also can add sound. And that again is just another way that can help calm the body down. So I want you to do your breathing. We're going to try to do 3 to 4 rounds of the inhale, hold if you can, exhale, make that exhale longer. And we're just going to do that for 1 minute and see how this goes for you. Here we go. All right, that was a minute. I'm going to pause. How did that go for everyone? Do you feel comfortable putting in the chat? Relaxing. And again, find the music you like. Some people like music, some people don't. I just say like play around with it and figure out what you like. I like doing that with youth, right? We can do it with any kind of music. Doesn't have to be long when you start any kind of meeting or if you feel like everyone's on edge. Hey, let's just stop. Let's start with doing a few breaths, recenter, and then we can go. It just is a nice way of just resetting. Whatever you're doing, particularly also if you're again anxious or overwhelmed. It just helps to kind of reset, slow you down a little bit, and you can be able to refocus and then stay in tune of whatever you're doing. Great. So that was peaceful, relaxing. So, like I said, I'm going to go through and stop a little bit throughout this presentation so that you can think through how could you do these different strategies again for yourself. How could you participate in mindfulness this week? We've already done it once today, so you can get check mark for doing some mindful breathing. But how could you also do any other mindfulness? Lunch is coming up. Could you mindfully eat, slow down, focusing on the taste and textures of the food? Could you mindfully have a conversation? Could you mindfully listen to music? I just think through what could you participate in mindfully this week or in the next, say, few days. And also, how could you incorporate mindfulness in the activities that you do with the kids that you work with? So, like I said, I had the worksheet. I call it my self-care toolkit, and that you can find on the website as well. I know Josh is going to send it to you all after the meeting with all of the materials today with the slides. But this is a place where you can write it down, or if you also want to use this with the youth that you're working with, write down, okay, doing one thing in the moment without judgment. What are different activities they could do? They can't think of those pleasurable activities, that yellow line, anything you enjoy, because anything you enjoy, you could do mindfully. So again, just a way to start thinking through for yourself as well as for the kids you work with. And mindfulness, again, such a good tool, very relaxing, helps recenter, has a lot of good, even like medical impacts of inflammation and just stress hormones in the body. But behaviorally, concentration, attention, focus, understanding yourself, others, all those things, important things that we need for regulation, resilience, as well as academic success, increases by being mindful and also decreases the things that we want to decrease: impulsivity, stress, anxiety, depression, negative coping behaviors. If we can be mindful and slow down, then we're not reacting immediately with those urges, the things that we might typically do that can cause us problems. So check, hopefully we have an idea now what emotional resilience is and its components: self-awareness and self-regulation. Understanding what mindfulness is, which is a component of that self awareness, and practical strategies for you to use mindfulness in your everyday life, as well as how you can use mindfulness with the youth that you work with. So hopefully we have those things down, you have them on your sheet where you can use those moving forward. So when we think about mindfulness, like I said, that's that recognition of emotions, being able to slow down. And that's really important, right? Because we can't know what to do with our emotions if we don't know what emotions we're experiencing. So here's a feelings wheel. Again, something that helps some people if they're like, I can't identify what it is. Well, this gives you some examples of, okay, is it happiness? Or you feel like it's more playful? Is it anger? Is it scared? And then we have some other kind of gradations of those on this wheel that can help people if they have a difficult time identifying. That's really critical for everyone to be able to slow down, to identify what exactly it is they're feeling. Because, like I said, do very different things for boredom than you do for anxiety, that you do for loneliness versus what you would do for being scared, right? That might be like, oh, we take some deep breaths. That could help, but maybe there's something else. Maybe I really just want to be around people that I feel lonely. Deep breathing is not going to help me feel more connected to someone. So making sure that what we do, right, that matches what someone needs. And how do we know what people, or how do we know different strategies? That is the self-regulation, the different strategies we can use to manage our emotional responses. So distress tolerance. These are those strategies. Like I said, we're going to apply these when we're feeling discomfort or any kind of emotion, even positive emotions, honestly, that's going to help us from engaging in destructive behaviors or behaviors that are going to cause us problems or behaviors that we just don't want to do anymore. These are really vital when people are particularly in crisis or feeling emotionally unstable, that's generally when we go and do the things, urges and behaviors, impulsive things that when we step back and think about, oh, that probably wasn't the best idea to cuss that person out. That probably wasn't the best idea to run away. Again, when we're not in danger, good to run away, actually in physical danger. But, probably wasn't the best thing to throw that chair at someone because I was upset. We knew that in hindsight afterwards, but in the moment, it's hard to figure those things out. And so having other strategies will be really helpful. And so the stress tolerance strategies, a whole bunch of different ones they can use. And that's a good thing I like. A great thing I like about DBT is there's so many different strategies that you can use, which means you can make your own toolkit based on what you need. For some of you, I'm like, if that doesn't work for you, then don't do it. There's so many other ones. So find the ones that you do like or that do work and focus on those. And we're going to go through several of them today. They are broken up too into behavioral strategies. So this is like more activities things you can do versus cognitive strategies or techniques. So it's just really like altering your thoughts and thinking or ways going on inside the mind. And so we'll talk about both of them. The first strategy is the stop skill. So stop is about stopping. So mindfully, when you figure out something's going on, not reacting. So just stop. Just stop in your place. Just don't do anything and then take a step back, right? The idea of not acting that urge, not being impulsive, just stop, take a breath, take a few breaths, and then do some mindfulness. Observe, how are you feeling? What are your thoughts? What's going on around you, right? So that really is that, right? That self-awareness. And then once you've stopped, then you can say, okay, what do I need? What's going on? Can I decide, oh, I have that toolkit. Let me go there and see what I can do. Oh, maybe I can go talk to a friend or to a counselor, right? The idea is stop. Like whenever you are aware, and that's really important to increase that mindfulness of awareness. If you become aware and can just stop and not react, even for a few seconds, that stops the train from going and gives you time to think about and you to think about other solutions or to have other things that can do around them. So that's just the first skill. Very simple. Just stopping, breathe, like assess, look around you, and then decide how to proceed. And we're going to give you tools and other things you can do for what that proceeding looks like. So the first thing we're going to look at is the self-soothe skills using our six senses. I love this because we always have our senses with us. Whatever senses you have, you can use them. They're always going to be with you. Sight, anything, colors, sleeping mask, coloring books, looking at Pinterest, looking at movies, looking at books, anything that you want to look at that could be soothing or pleasing or relaxing. Touch, things that are comfortable for you for touch. It can be soft things. It might be prickly things if that is really comforting for you. But again, the idea of doing what is comforting. If touching something hot isn't comforting, then we're not doing that because the idea is that we're supposed to be self-soothing, calming our body. So finding those things that would do that. A hot shower could calm your body. For me, a cold shower doesn't calm my body, but if it does calm someone else's, I say do it. Again, just figuring out what it is, a heated blanket, a weighted blanket. Does that texture, does that weight really help someone calm down? I would say a lot of youth and adults, that weighted blanket is helpful just to kind of ground and to have something. Hugging is a really important and usually a really nice, comforting, calming technique to have. People. Sounds, kind of like what we had before with the video, can be calming for people. Nature, water generally is a calming sound for many people. Smell, thinking about what it is. Is it floral? Is it nature smells? Is it y- what is it for you? And figuring out what those scents that you enjoy, have those around you, lotion or candles, sprays, whatever it may be. And taste. What do you like that, again, is soothing? And doing it mindfully, right? Slowly eating that food, that really taking in the taste, the textures of the things that you enjoy. And the sixth sense is movement. Really great for kids just to be able to move around, to get out some of that energy, but also the endorphins that are released when we're moving around. So finding what activities could be helpful, whether it's building blocks, cleaning, playing music, going for a walk, acting, dancing, gardening. Again, being creative with it, but figuring out, okay, of the senses, what could I do that would be soothing for me if I'm distressed, if I'm upset and I want to soothe and calm myself? What would things I could do around me or have in my toolkit, have at the organizations I work at, have in the car for myself or for kids that are in the car with me, have, you know, in my office. So making sure, again, other things having it accessible to you so that you can use those things when needed. Technique within that I like to use with the senses is the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 grounding technique. So this also works really well with anyone that needs a distraction, but it's using your senses. So if I have a child that working with that is anxious or is getting overwhelmed, it's okay. Name for me 5 things you can see, and I want you to name them out. Okay, 5. 4 things you can touch, and I want you to touch them and tell me what it feels like. The table's smooth and cold. The sticker is kind of bumpy. My pants are warm and soft. Things that you can hear, which really makes you have to be mindful, slow down. What do I hear around me? Is the air conditioning? Is it my breathing? Is it someone talking? 2 things you can smell and 1 thing you can taste, or if you can have around you that you could taste like, oh, I have some lip balm. I can see if that tastes like anything. But what that does, one, it grounds you. It makes you become in the present moment, that mindfulness. It's also slowing the person down. So whatever was making them anxious, whatever was making them upset, they're not focusing on that. They're focusing on their senses, right? So now we've given them space and time. And so now we can go back and say, hey, okay, now that we've done that, talk to me. Like, what's going on? One, it brings down their distress level has come down generally because they're not focusing on that. So the intensity has come down. And then they can decide and maybe hopefully communicate what they need. Or maybe that break was enough. They just needed a separation, thinking or being around whatever that situation was triggering to help bring down the distress. Last thing I'll say about self-soothe with our senses is it's really nice to incorporate as many senses as you can. So for me, when I think about self-soothe, one of kind of like uh, uh, prototypic kind of ideas is like taking a bath, right? Self-soothe taking a bath. So if I'm in a bathtub, I have the water. I like warm water, so that's nice. That's my touch. I also I'll have bubbles in it, and so that's great. I can kind of play with it or just have it there to move around a little bit, move my legs around. So I'm using 2 of my senses. I also would love to have smell. So usually with I might have a bath bomb or something in the water that smells. I can also have candles around me. That's bringing in that calming, that soothing experience. 3 senses. Taste. Maybe I'll have a drink, maybe some tea, hot tea, or maybe it's already a warm bath. Maybe I have cold tea that will be able to kind of balance those 2 out. whatever works for you. But having a drink there could be nice, really calming, really soothing. And then sound. All right, calming music, kind of like we had before. Have some classical music or something calming in the background. For me, whatever's calming for you, have that playing. Could you imagine thinking about that situation? I'm in the bath, I have the bubbles, it smells good, it's warm, I'm moving around a little bit, I have my tea, I have the music, I'm in this tranquil place, thinking a spa, right? All these things are going on. That's five senses. We're missing one: sight. Spas, they're usually darker, right? Calming, having things around that visually are soothing and pleasing. We are now incorporating all of our senses. If you imagine, I just think about this, how relaxing that state is. So whatever you're going to be doing, if you can incorporate a few different senses in that same experience, it's going to be like an extra boost of calming yourself. So if I need to calm down, I have a blanket and it's weighted as the weight of that, but also maybe it's a color that I like, or it also has lavender in it. Okay, I'm now incorporating several different senses in that experience. So, toolkit time. How can you incorporate your senses to self-soothe for yourself? Right, we have those six senses: sight, hearing, smell, taste, touch, and movement. And then how can you also incorporate self-soothe into the activities you do with the youth that you work with? And I'd love if someone could put a few of these in the chat maybe, and so you could get some ideas what other people are doing or have done with youth they work with. I don't see anything in the chat, but I'll just give a few examples if you want to put it. Okay, jumping jacks for movement, that's great. I know also some people I've heard of like doing push-ups with kids. Dance party could be one. Um, yeah, just thinking about just different things. You know, they do dance breaks or brain breaks in schools. That's using those senses. Pleasure, but also can be really soothing. Yes, eating candy, chocolate, absolutely. Thank you all. Sandbox, Play-Doh, absolutely. Yep, that texture, that movement with using your hands. Great, yeah. Coloring books, music, right? And think about a lot of different things that we could have available. Apple juice, just having little things around that the kids can. I was in a workshop once, and I think someone said they ice cube trays, they put apple juice in it and froze it. And so if a child needed something, they could just take the ice cube, a small one, and like suck on it. And that was cold, but also that taste was helpful for them for being able to soothe themselves if they're feeling overwhelmed, and have a little bit of sugar in it, which can be helpful. Okay, okay, moving on. So the next set of skills I want to talk about in this restaurant are the accept and improve skills. Again, we're going to get DBT does great with doing acronyms, gives you a lot of different examples, and try to give you an easier way of understanding or keeping those skills in front of your mind. So accept skills and improve the moment. We're going to start with the accept skills. And these are when you're feeling overwhelmed or having intense emotion, these are things that you can do to distract yourself. So the idea again that giving yourself a separation from whatever's going on by focusing on something else. Again, and this is intentional. I'm doing it because I'm overwhelmed or something's stressing me out or making me upset, sad, whatever it is. So I'm going to distract. I'm going to focus on something else for a little bit. And then I'm going to bring myself back to that situation when I'm feeling a little better. So the activities, just doing something else, doing it mindfully. You can do music, again, drawing, doodling. I do hidden figures or hidden items and like the highlights with kids I work with. It's great if they like that. Some people find that distressing, so don't do it. But some kids like that, and you just focus on that for a few minutes. Contributing, helping someone else. Hey, like, can you go and like help one of your classmates or a friend or a younger one of the younger grades or groups doing an activity, or it can be the helper, right? So just helping someone else can be a really great one to give them something else to do, helping someone, the other person's feeling grateful generally for that, and also separates them from the situation that's causing that stress. Emotions, something that's going to reduce a different emotion. So if I'm feeling sad, what's going to make me feel joy or at least decrease that intensity of the sadness or the anger, frustration? So watching funny videos or funny memes that I have or someone else has. I love when people send me funny memes and just focus on that for a few minutes. So helpful just to get your mind off of that situation. And again, keeping us from doing the thing that's going to cause more destruction or more distress. And sensation. This is a great one. So, this is different than self soothing. So, I'm not trying to calm myself, I'm trying to distract myself with the accept skills. So, this idea when I'm going to soothe myself, it might be chocolate, but that's really going to distract me if I'm having a really intense emotion. A warhead or Takis or something. My threshold for spicy and sour is not very high. So, if I have one of those, whatever's in my mind about whatever's going on, not happening because I'm focusing on the sensation of the spicy, sour thing in my mouth. And those are nice to have because particular warheads, they don't melt. You could have them in your pocket. You could have them almost anywhere if you need to give to someone. But finding what it is that could be helpful for you, for the kids that you work with, that can provide that sensation. Having an ice cube. If you're home, this is why I tell people take a really cold shower. Not going to soothe you for most people at all. But when you're in that shower and it's really cold, what you're not thinking about is what someone told you or the thing that was stressing you out because you're really cold and you're just trying to keep yourself warm. So, this idea of just being able to do something that's going to be effective for you, that's going to be distracting or effective for the kids you work with. Now, those were the behavioral. We also have some cognitive strategies. So, comparison can be helpful for some people, comparing themselves to a time in the past, like, hey, like a year ago, you were in a completely different place. You got this. We have the skills. You've been working on, these strategies. You've been helping out in the group. I believe in you. You are in a much different place, and you've shown that you can handle these situations, right? That comparison. Sometimes for some people, comparing themselves to other people that might have worse than they do. This doesn't always work. And if it doesn't work for you or for your youth, move on to something else. But for some people, that comparison can be helpful. Push away. So, can I just put it in a box on the shelf? And I can't think about it right now, but in 15 minutes or in an hour, I'm going to focus on it and think about the thing. But right now, I can't because I got to take this exam. Or right now, I can't because I need to do work and I can't be thinking about that relationship right now. Easier said than done for some people, others, easy to do. So, again, idea if it works for you, do it. Use that strategy. If it doesn't, don't do it. What I also say for these strategies is not one and done. So I might do an activity, I might do some sensation. My intensity might be going down, but it might still be there. I might still feel overwhelmed. So you might have to do 3 or 4 different strategies, and that's okay. I usually say make a list of like 5 or 6. And if you get to the sixth one and you still feel overwhelmed, then we can evaluate. But typically, by the time you get down between a few of them, you're in a different place than where you are. And you've taken quite a bit of time away from that situation. So it's giving you some headspace and time to get the intensity down and to be able to think through some alternatives. One other thing I would say too is that sensation within that, the push away again might not work as the number one thing, but maybe after 4 different strategies you've done, I've gone for a walk, went out and got some water, um, walked around a little bit, came back into the classroom to take the exam. Now I can maybe push it away and be able to focus. And then thoughts is the one I really love to do. Great distraction and focusing your thoughts on something else because the thoughts are really a part of the equation that keeps the situation going. Because right, I have a stressful situation and then I talk about it to someone. Could be helpful, but it could also bring up more like, oh, now I'm getting more frustrated as I talk through it more and it reignites that stressor. But if I move my thoughts to something else, that really does help decrease that intensity. So reading a book, counting the tiles on the ceiling, doing a puzzle, doing something that's going to occupy your mind mindfully. So really you don't have a lot of space to think about something else during that activity. And one example of this that I really love to use is the ABC game. This idea is you pick a topic and then you go through the alphabet and see, if you can find something for every letter of the alphabet. So food. So if it was me and another youth, I'll say, okay, we're going to do food. I'll have the ABCs in front. I say A, apple, B, banana, C, carrot, D, donut, E, eggplant, F, fish, right? Go back and forth. We've gone through like 32 letters, and that's right in the alphabet, giving it some time. Then maybe, right, you can go and talk about the situation or take some deep breaths afterwards. If you're by yourself, you can also do that. Again, it's a nice way of being able just to occupy the mind for a little bit, distract yourself, give you a little break from what's going on, and then go back and see if you can manage through it or think about other things you can do to help that situation cope through it. So those are those accept skills. Activities, contributing, comparison, emotions, eliciting a different emotion, pushing it away, replacing those thoughts, and distracting with sensations. So what new accept skill? Because usually we find like, oh, I have done some of these. I have counted to 10, or I do listen to music and activity when I'm upset. Awesome. Remember that, note it. But what else could you do? Because the idea here is to see how much we can add to our toolkit. Because you might not have the ability to listen to music, or you might not have your journal to write something down. So having a few things you can do is really helpful so that you always have options available to you and also options available to the youth you work with. So giving a few seconds, go ahead and jot down accept skills. Again, you can use for yourself as well as for the youth. Okay. So the next set of skills are the improve the moment skills. So these are trying to make the moment more positive or easier to tolerate. So we use these when I'm feeling overwhelmed or someone's feeling overwhelmed, and the situation is going to last for a while, or when the other distractions aren't working. That, or maybe I can't leave the situation. I just got to figure out how to improve the moment. And I've tried some distractions, but it's still a pretty stressful and unpleasant situation that I have to stay in. So improve the moment can be a few other strategies to try that will help you manage through that situation. So we're going to try to change our thoughts about ourselves with the situation, as well as try to change, if we can, our bodily responses to the situation. The first one is imagery. It's the idea of going to your happy place, your calming place in your mind. If you can kind of transport yourself to that place, again, you're still in the situation, but daydream for a little bit. Again, we're doing this mindfully, we're doing this intentionally because I need to bring down the distress. I have to bring down the intensity. I need to cope through the stressful situation. So if I can, go to my happy place in my head. Real or fictional, doesn't matter. Whatever is going to be calming for you. And tying in what we've talked about before, your sixth senses. What do you see while you're in that place? What's around you? Is it cold? Is it hot? How does it feel? What do you hear? Are there birds in the air? Is there music? Are there people talking? What's going on? What sounds do you hear? Are you taste? Are you drinking anything, eating anything in that space? Smell. What does it smell like? Is it the ocean? Is it salty? Do you smell food cooking in the background? Do you smell fish in the water? You're at a lake. Does it smell like nature? Movement. Are you swimming? Are you sitting? Are you walking? Right? Using as many senses as you can and really incorporating all those things. Just like when we self-soothe, when we imagine and we use all of those senses, it really helps transport us into that space. And what I say for people is in the moment, imagery can be really difficult to do if you haven't practiced it or haven't, like, it's almost extremely distressing. Say, okay, I want you to imagine your happy place. No, it's too much. I'll probably do a lot of those distracting activities from accepts before this, But if I've already practiced or know my happy place is, I might be able to more easily transport myself to it because I've practiced it. It's kind of there. I know what the parts are. Maybe it's an actual physical place. When I'm in that place, I can really do it mindfully to really be like, okay, what are the smells? What do I see around me? Like noting that in my mind. So then when I go to it, when I'm not there, I can transport myself there more easy. So that's imagery. The next two are cognitive strategies, are meaning and prayer. So, can I turn lemons into lemonade? Is there any meaning or purpose to the situation? Is it making me stronger? Is it that I wouldn't have learned how to use these skills if this hadn't happened? Not that I wanted it to happen, but can I find some sort of meaning or positive aspect that I can get out of this? Working out. May not love to work out, but really love the result. Or the more I do it, I know that I'll be able to go faster. I have more chances of making uh, the team if I practice, even though the practicing is really stressful and kind of uncomfortable. Prayer, this could be a moment of praying or speaking to a higher power. If you're not spiritual, you can also look to your inner self to cope with the pain. And like I said, with all of these, if it doesn't work for you, if that's something that resonates with you or the youth you work with, move on. But for some people, it really does. And so this could be something that could be in their toolkit if prayer was something that really does help them improve that moment and focus in um, to make a situation feel more bearable. The next two are things we've already talked about, and that's something about DBT. There's different ways of using the skills and incorporating them. So relaxation, calming the body. Again, you're not changing the situation, but how can I change my body to be able to manage through and make it a little bit more positive? So, right, that relaxing of doing the deep breathing. If I'm doing that in a situation where I'm really nervous about giving a presentation or um, doing something like doing a concert, if I do some relaxation, try to improve that moment a little bit by calming down my body, then I can go and do that activity that I need to do that still might be uncomfortable. One thing at a time, mindfulness, just focusing in on one thing. So I say for this one, improve the moment. So if I'm in a situation and I can't get out of it, what can I focus on and just focus all my attention on that? Maybe it's reading a book or doing a Sudoku, or I'm just going to really focus in on what the teacher's saying so I can try to ignore this other child or classmate or person that's frustrating me. And if I kind of just zone in as much as I can on this other thing, then it helps me cope through. It's not changing what they're doing, but helping me manage through. Vacation. So taking a little mental break from the stressful situation. It could be physically moving away a little bit, or again, just kind of like in your mind. So we can use imagery for this too, for vacation. But something that's relaxing and distracting. So if you could like step outside, it could be like just going for a walk, or if you're home, going to the kitchen and getting something to drink, or even if you're, at an organization where you can go and get snacks or go talk to someone or going to a different room. Again, the idea of I'm doing this because I need to help calm myself with whatever's distressing, but it's not, none of these are ever solving the problem. It's helping you cope through. And then you can figure out, okay, do I just need to like make it through the situation? And that was what I need to do. Or is it something that now that I've made it through, I can talk to someone and figure out what I need to do so this doesn't happen again. And then last one is encouragement. This idea of being able to remind yourself of your own strengths, of your own past successes, affirmations that, again, are uplifting, help boost your self esteem. And so these are some examples of affirmation cards that I've made. You can find a lot of these online. But again, the idea of what are some things that speak to you? You got this. You made it through 100% of your most difficult days. I am unique. I am capable. Again, whatever is helpful, resonates with you, would be really helpful to have those mantras, those quotes, those affirmations that will help encourage you through those stressful situations. Okay, so those are those improved skills: imagery, meaning, prayer, relaxation, one thing at a time, vacation, and encouragement. So if you have that sheet, write down what are new improved skills that you can add to your toolkit, as well as how can you promote improved skills for the youth you work with. I know we're coming close to the end of time, and I'm actually to the end of these skills. So those were the mindfulness and distress tolerance skills. I'm going to give a little bit of a bonus. I'm going to go into the emotion regulation just for a second, because like I said, the skills of distress tolerance don't solve the problem, but they help you cope through. The emotion regulation skills can help you hopefully one, sometimes avert getting to feeling distress, but also figure out if you do get distressed and it was a real problem, right? What can you do about it? So check the facts can be something that be helpful for youth to do. And again, sometimes do ahead of time or at the beginning of that mindfulness of kind of slowing down, saying, okay, am I interpreting the situation correctly? What are the facts? Not how I feel, not my thoughts about it, but are the facts. So my friend's mad at me. Well, what are the facts? They didn't call me after I sent a text asking them to call. That's the fact. My thought that they don't like me is interpretation. So if we stick with the facts, and are there some other explanations why they didn't call you back? Their phone died, um, their mom called them in, their mom took their phone, right? There are other reasons why this could be happening other than they don't like me. So that's one thing. So if you stop there, like, okay, what are other possibilities? So you can get distressed about this, but you don't know if that's really true. And maybe that's enough. Like, to kind of stop, okay, well, they didn't call me back. Okay, well, let me see, make sure they're okay, or go check on them. Am I thinking extremes, like all or nothing thinking, or black and white, figuring out, missing that there is a middle ground? What's the probability of this worst thing happening? So I think like, oh gosh, it's like something really terrible is going to happen. Well, it could, but there are also, again, other possibilities. And how likely is it that one thing is going to happen versus likelihood of something else happening? And even if the worst thing happened, could you imagine yourself coping through it? Do you have skills or tools? Like, well, you don't want it to happen, but if it did, do you have tools? Do you know what you could do to manage through? And then the second part is like, yeah, I could, but it's still distressing. Okay, problem solved. Can we do something different? Can we solve this problem? Can we fix it? So this is that Pikachu of identifying the problem, thinking of what solutions, choosing a solution, going, doing it, evaluating whether it worked or not. If it did, great. If it didn't, okay, regroup. What are the backup plans? What are some other different possibilities? So this is another tool you can use with kids. Now, not when they're distressed. These is very cognitive, so you need to have the intensity down to do this, but this could be something that you can do after the distress tolerance skills kind of calm back down, like, okay, so you and your friend got into a fight. Okay, that's the problem. What do you want to do about it? Do you want to ignore them? Do you want to talk to them about it? What are the possibilities? You could ignore them, pros and cons. You could go talk to them, pros and cons. What do you want to do? How are you going to do it? Did it work or not? That's the problem solving. So, coming to the end of our hour, hopefully now you know the concept of emotion resilience and those components of self-awareness and self-regulation. Mindfulness, that first part for self-awareness, what that is, how to manage, strategies you can use for that, as well as the stress tolerance for yourself and for others. Just quickly, I have that sheet. There's also a virtual coping box that you can use, which can be really helpful. There's also some other resources for mental health that can be helpful for some youth if they're having a lot of distress. And I also, on my youth coalition, I have a group of youth a program that I have, and we have resources there as well that could be helpful for youth and organizations. So thank you so much. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. If you want more information about DBT, please contact me. The handouts are there. Josh will also be presenting those, giving those to you all. And thank you so much.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Sapolsky, for the wonderful webinar. And before we close out, I'm just going to speak briefly about a new IYI event that we have coming up. Join us for the 2025 National Summit on Youth Wellbeing, a virtual summit hosted by the Indiana Youth Institute. It's all about tackling the big challenges facing today's youth. We're zeroing in on the kids who often get overlooked. This summit will bring together expert speakers from across the country to share their knowledge and give you real-world strategies to make a difference. If you're passionate about creating spaces where kids can thrive, this summit is for you. Additionally, our next monthly professional education webinar is on April 16th. And that one is titled What's So Important About Puberty Anyway? So that one is also it's a preview session for our National Summit on Youth Wellbeing. So if you're interested in potentially attending the summit, this is a good place to kind of check out and see what it's all about. Last kind of info slide here. The best way to keep updated on everything youth issues in Indiana, professional education trainings, and organizational opportunities is our weekly update newsletter. Sign up at IYI.org/newsletters or use the QR code. And then as we conclude, I sincerely want to thank you all for being here with us today. We appreciate your impact, voice, and choice to learn and partner with IYI. Later today, you'll receive an email that includes a copy of the presentation, resources, and a link to complete an evaluation of this webinar. Please take a few minutes to let us know what you thought about today's presentation, and upon completion, you will be redirected to your certificate. If you don't receive the evaluation email, please check your junk email as it may have been directed there. This now concludes our presentation, and on behalf of Indiana's youth, thank you again for showing up today and every day for the kids of Indiana.